Pattern. In a fix, well, you blame Fox.
If you talk to somebody who said, well, I don't know, I was watching Fox News and they said this horrible. Rupert Murdoch, who owns Fox News and is an immigrant himself. I don't know if you're familiar with Rupert Murdoch's views, but let's just say he doesn't have an Obama sticker on his car. Those of you who are watching certain news channels that, on which I'm not very popular, if you are on the right, then you're only reading the Wall Street Journal editorial page and watching Fox News.
I've got one television station that is entirely devoted to attacking my administration.
I expect us, to obsess and get childish because that's kind of what media people do. I don't know about the president. Anyway, do good leaders do this sort of thing? Anyway, point fingers to political maestro, author of The Kennedy Half Century, Larry Sabato. And Larry, I'm thinking of your book, and I'll think of so many Kennedy examples. Not that everything can be compared, exactly. But there are many times where he said, I screwed up, or I did this, or I missed something. They're replaying a lot of Kennedy press conferences now ahead of the 50th tragic anniversary of his death. And you see that again and again where he's not. He might have problems with certain press members, and he wasn't shy behind closed doors to reflect that. But generally, he did not in public. What do you think of that?
Yes. Look, Neil, presidents never look good when they're blaming others. Obviously, he's throwing red meat out to the Democratic base. Now, I don't think it applies to you. I think everyone loves Neil Cavuto, but Fox generally, sure, among Democrats, has a mixed reputation, let's say. So this is for the base. But prior to coming on here, I looked at the last 6 national surveys, Neil. All 6 of them had solid majorities opposed to Obamacare. No news organization is powerful enough to create majorities in 6 news surveys about something as big as Obamacare. It has to be real. And the president is simply shifting blame. There's got to be a problem inherent in the law if so many people are opposed to Obamacare, and consistently so over the last couple of years.
Well, even leaving aside what, surveys and the like, companies and managers and bosses, as you know, tend to move not so much whether they're red or blue, but green, what's in it for them, the money. And that's why so many of them in this generally right-leaning capitalist bastion love Bill Clinton, because he was good for business and they didn't want to do anything to deter that. Now, but leaving that aside, I mean, these were the same guys who decided, well, I see the full-time versus part-time provisions in this health care law. I'm going to make a lot of my workers part-time. I also see the foolishness of continuing to provide health care benefits to my retirees because I'm just paying through the nose. I'll dump them on these exchanges. So that's just based on the numbers they crunch, not what we're saying or anyone is saying. But having said that, this does indicate a pattern of behavior on the part of the president when it comes to absolving himself from even words he himself has said. The famous red line incident. I want to go through this. This is from the president.
A red line for us is we start seeing a whole bunch of chemical weapons moving around or being utilized.
First of all, I didn't set a red line. The world set a red line.
See, I hear that kind of stuff, Larry, and I say, he must know. The White House must know. We have this thing called tape, digital tape, and we can go right to it.
Yes, and that clearly shows bias, Neil. You should not be using those clips. But no, that's a perfect example of the blame shifting that has gone on in this White House. All presidents do it to a certain degree, but it's not attractive. It doesn't help them. Presidents never seem to understand what I think Kennedy understood, what Truman understood, what Reagan understood. In Iran-Contra, for example, you take responsibility. You take the blame, and it actually helps you. People respect you for taking that blame.
I was thinking, too, the way going after Republicans, I wish I had a little bit more time, but the bottom line is they screwed up. Even the tone of his press conference today, what was a press conference, a statement. Look, the Republicans are obstinate, so they can be obstinate over cooling it on spending, but Democrats are not when they're just as obstinate on not cooling it on spending. So it's sort of like a weird double standard,
In politics today, where you stand depends on where you sit, on which side of the aisle. It's so polarized, and this is a perfect example. Again, I think it's just partisan baiting. It's red meat for the partisan base.
Yeah, but it doesn't get much done. All right, Larry Sabato, thank you, my friend. All right, so if the
Thank you,
government shuts down, which party will be to blame? Pollster Frank Luntz has been keeping track of all of it. What do you think, Frank?
Well, I think that the Republicans will initially get the blame. In fact, that's what the polling shows. It's by about a 3-2 margin. That the independents do not like Obamacare. They do not like wasteful government spending. But they believe that the Republicans have been more obstinate and that the Republicans are playing politics. This is not an issue of policy. And I think that this is really important. That the issue is about communication. And the Republicans have not explained in principle what they are trying to achieve and what the benefits will be. They talk about the process of a government shutdown. What they're not communicating is the savings that will be passed along to hardworking taxpayers if they're successful.
You know, Frank, I wonder, obviously there's a great deal of antipathy toward the president's health care law, and that's what Republicans have been feeding off of. But if the government shuts down, you're saying whatever prompted that, let's say the health care law in opposition to it, the controversy of shutting the government down, to make your point, boomerangs, in this case, on Republicans.
It does. I was there in 1995. I was working on the House, and then I moved over to the Senate during the 95-96 shutdown, and I experienced it. And the American people did not feel any impact from the shutdown. But the reason why the Republicans got hurt is because they didn't think they did it for principled reasons. They thought they did it for political reasons. And you can't explain it in the last 96 hours to the American people. You have to do this over weeks, if not months. You have to demonstrate accountability. You have to demonstrate personal responsibility. And there have to be measurable results if you're going to push the government to this extent. And neither of those three attributes have been communicated by the GOP, and that's why the public is more likely to blame them.
Amazing. Frank Luntz, great seeing you again, my friend.
Pleasure, Nick.
All right, so that's where we stand. We don't stand anywhere, and we are on the brink. Tonight on Fox Business Network, Republican Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann on how Tea Partiers have brought us to this point, but she means that in a good way, and how Ted Cruz, she insists, will be seen as a hero when all the dust settles, even if it's after a government shutdown and it's still settling. All of that, as well as a look at two branches of government that have never been so far apart and parties that have never been so far apart. But I hasten to add, as I have many times in government shutdowns, and we've had, what, 18, 19 of them since the late 1970s, we always get through it. There's always in America. Life goes on. So shall we. We've got you covered. We've got your back. We're Fox. Right, Mr. President? That'll do it.